Yes, thank you, President Silla. Borstein?
Yes.
Gaffney?
Here.
Kelly?
Here.
Beggs?
Here.
Silla?
Here.
All present, thank you.
Thank you. Will you join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And now we will adjourn to closed session. So I will see you all there, or some of you. I'd like to move on to item number 6, approval of the agenda. Is there anything we want to move around, or else can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
No move.
Well, hold on. Mary, can I ask if we have some people here, are they here for a particular issue, and could we move that issue forward if that's the case?
Sure. Steve, do you have input on that? Or is it I'm thinking it's item number 12, so it's pretty high up. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So it's up to the board if you want to bring it in, after the public time before committee reports out. That could be.
Okay.
That's up.
I'd suggest that if it's number 12, which is high up, we probably shouldn't, because maybe other people might join prior to us doing 12. So maybe it's just as well we leave it.
And I think it's a pretty short agenda overall tonight. So hopefully, oh great, there's Pam. Okay, so I had a motion from Michael and a second by Tom for the agenda. Is that right?
I'll second.
Okay, I got one. Okay, Julia, roll call vote, please.
Yes, thank you, President Silla. Borstein?
Yes.
Gaffney?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Beggs?
Yes.
Silla?
Yes.
Unanimous vote, thank you.
All right, now let's move to open time for the public to raise items not on the agenda and for future agendas. Is there any public who wishes to raise items at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 8, committees report out. The Finance Committee. Tom, would you like to report on the Finance Committee for us?
Yes, the Finance Committee had a fairly short meeting yesterday. Mary and I, we reviewed the financial statements, and our finances are in very good shape. We ended our dry spell revenue period in December, and so we have a good cash position. We also have our expenses are below budget, considerably below budget, because a couple of staff positions haven't been filled. So everything is looking good in that order. We also reviewed consideration of adopting approving the final acceptance of the force main appurtenance projects and the pump station. And Steve told us how important these projects are, and we're at risk for not being able to shut off our pipelines in an emergency. So we replaced a couple of valves, and then we replaced some pressure relief valves, which actually is an energy saving program plus a safety program. And then the final thing was we reviewed the disposal of some surplus property of the district. And this is a good time to do it, because we might as well not move things if we move at sometime in the future, or store them for that matter. So these are both items that we'll review on the agenda as well. Anything else, Mary?
No, thanks. That was great. Central Marin Sanitation Agency, Doug or Michael, who wants to report on that for us?
Okay. I will. Thank you, Michael. It was a fairly light agenda. We talked about the source control program. It was a presentation from staff, which was really great, to talk about how we monitor such things as mercury reduction, the fog program, and public education. And so, for example, CMSA does the dental mercury reduction for our district, for some other districts as well. And so it's important that we are not allowed, and there are certain devices required at dental stations to not allow mercury from people's teeth, for example, to go back into the bay. So that was a very great presentation. And by the way, we are continuing at CMSA to have staff do presentations on different issues for the board, which is really helpful. It allows us to get to know the staff and to get to know what they're doing and be educated more on some of the smaller intricacies that we might not normally put on a board agenda. We talked about proposed revisions to the public project bid ordinance, but they were minor changes, not a lot of changes. It was just that we wanted to kind of clean up some languages, drop some words. There really wasn't a lot that mattered. There was no grit there. I hope you agree, Michael. We reclassified our information systems administrator, just changing the job classification slightly. That did increase that person's salary a little bit, not substantial, but that job, the security of our information, of our data, and out of our internal network is so incredibly important that any mistake there would be catastrophic, or could be catastrophic. So I was all on board with that. We changed the administrative leave program a little bit to match staff. The administration leave policy was slightly different, and we preferred to have unified policies across the board. And so we did that. It didn't change numbers significantly in any manner at all. We also revised our hours of work policy regarding telecommuting, sorry. Not much of a change there, just clarifying that, when people have the need to telecommute, we found that it's worked fine in certain job classifications. And we would like the staff and the general manager to have flexibility to allow telecommuting when possible, not as a regular policy at all, not as an ongoing or long-term policy at all, but at the discretion of the general manager to allow somebody to work from home under certain circumstances, including some that are personal, which is fine. If somebody's doing an administrative policy and they had a sickness in the family and wanted to cover childcare themselves and took a Friday and a Monday, at the discretion of the general manager, we authorize that. I want to be very clear, it was not something that would be ongoing. That's not in the policy. So that was about it. Michael, anything to add? Okay.
All right. North Bay Watershed Association, Pam, was there a meeting?
Yes, Julia, can you share the screen? All right, girl. I'm going to try and keep it painless. This was a presentation, not this month, but last month. And I'm only going to keep it to 3 minutes. So it was a basic introduction to what the North Bay Watershed is. And Andy Rogers is doing an amazing job. He is our new director. So you want to go to do I do this, Julia, or do you for the next slide?
Just say next slide, and I'd be happy to switch to the next one.
Next slide. So here we go. So here's a quick overview, and you can see North Bay Watershed Association, and here are membership and partners. Each entity pays an annual fee, depending, I believe, on the population size. We have a strategic plan. We meet monthly. We also have a joint technology group that talks about how to gather funds for different projects. And then One Water, we're integrating One Water philosophy, which is interconnectedness, efficiency, and integration of water sources. Okay, next slide. This is a great picture, and here's our mission statement. It's to facilitate partnerships. It's been in existence about 10 years plus Jack Gibson is still the chair. It's a great group of people. It's open, meetings are open to the public, and we're getting new members every year. It's growing quickly. Okay, next slide. Here is some pictures about some of the watersheds of the North Bay. You can see the Carquinez Straits, which is where I grew up. And then here's the Napa River. I actually went to nursing school in Napa, and Petaluma and Corte Madera. There's other places, but these are more of the main watersheds of the North Bay. We have 25 diverse entities. That includes sewer districts, water districts. It can be municipalities. So it's not all just water agencies. It's an integrated group. Okay, next slide. Here is a map. I love this map. Shows the counties we're involved with: Marin, Solano, Sonoma, and Napa, I think. If I missed any, please let me know. And here's our members, or most of them. Okay, next slide. So the North Bay watershed, more than 1.3 million people live in the 4 North Bay counties, and more than 2,000 miles of streams flow through the North Bay watersheds. And so we also talk about how North Bay relies on local water supply. And Jack just did a presentation about our drought. We're at 56%, and it's pretty bad right now. So we'll get more reports as that continues. And here's some other discussion about groundwater, etc. Okay, next slide. So here we go. Think globally, act locally, and collaborate regionally. Next slide. Here is our structure. We have board of directors. Sometimes they're managers, sometimes they're electeds. Here's the committee. We also have, we have a conference committee, and we have a budget committee that doesn't meet very often. And that's pretty much, it's not complicated. Next slide. Here are our goals. It's how we connect. We deal with regulations, funding. We get grant money. Sometimes we have people just give us money. I think currently we may have about 200,000. It's not a big budget. We also share resources with other agencies, and we have the STRAW program for children through education. And also we have an influence on local, state, and federal policies and programs. Next slide. So here are some of our successes. We have, we have our conference, we have a newsletter, we do education. There's also an oak planting going on in Sonoma County from the fire damaging so many trees. So we're constantly involved in the community. Next slide. Okay, so here is another map of local stakeholders and how we're involved with them, with over 50,000 acres of wetlands and trying to restore some of those. Next slide. Here are some of our benefits: reliable water supply, better water supply. I'm really into the education piece, pretty much. I kind of push that. And our habitats are improved. Okay, next slide. I told Steve I'd do this in 5 minutes, and it's 5 minutes, so I'm going to speed it up. So this is our track. We have a really good track record with the community and trust. We realize what the returns are by staying involved and collaborating with other agencies. And I'm not going to go into every one. If you want this presentation, I can email it to you. Okay, next slide. What slide are we on? Is this the last one, Julia?
This
Looks
is
like
slide
13 out of 44.
Okay, keep going. I'll wrap it up. Just go on to the next slide. I thought this was interesting. Here is how it's been over the years for different adaptation problems we've had. And right now we're in a severe drought. Next slide. Here are other pressures that we're dealing with, cost of living, politics. Next slide. And we're constantly looking at opportunities on how we can live and work in watersheds to improve them. Next slide. Next slide. This is the last slide. So this is actually moving into the One Water approach, and I'm not going to do the One Water. I just wanted to do the North Bay, but we work together with the same philosophy. And I know Steve's really got a lot of knowledge about One Water. So thank you for listening. Thank you, Julia. You were perfect.
Happy to help.
Thanks, Pam. Thanks for sharing that. That's very interesting. All right, so now we're on agenda item number 9, verbal report by general manager. Steve.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Pam, for that overview. A reminder that, you know, we're one of many agencies. Out of that list of agencies, you saw those logos. We're the only agency that's only a collection system. All of those other agencies have, they may be a treatment plant and a collection system, or otherwise water agencies and purveyors. And so it's interesting. We have our unique voice, you know, in terms of managing a collection system and ways we can collaborate with other water or stormwater agencies in our daily work and for watershed protection, which we're part of that story. So I'm glad we're involved. Yes, on my report, I've got several things, but I can hit them pretty rapidly. I would ask Julia, maybe you could help me or make me the presenter. And great. I see.
Are you able to share your screen now?
Yeah, so I'm working on that now. Okay, I'm almost there. You have to click applications. And I'm looking for this is it here. So I'm sharing, and I think when I'm done, I'm going to need to have you disconnect me and then reconnect me. So what I'm reporting on here is Effect TV is the Comcast Xfinity cable TV shows, and so some metrics from our public service announcements on keeping fats, oils, and grease out of the sewer, keeping wipes out of the sewer, and keeping pharmaceutical products out of the sewer. Those 3 things were aired between November and February, and we co-funded it with 8 other sanitary districts. So we only pay a 1/9 share of the cost. So in doing this, we have some metrics that the Effect TV reported to us. I thought I'd share quickly with you. Our ads were delivered 62,000 times, 393 hours, and 95% of the people watched the whole commercial. Just some highlights here that this was just that a high percentage of people watch the commercials all the way through. Most people are seeing it on the cable TV, but also they see it in other venues like YouTube. The History Channel was the most common viewing, but then there was also CNN, HGTV, and ESPN. And I actually saw our commercials on the bowl games over New Year's, you know, for the college football. So I confirmed it happened. So I thought you might be interested in some of those metrics that cable TV reported to us. The other agencies really like the commercials, and now, you know, CMSA does public education as a program for the different treatment plants in the Marin County. So now they've taken this program and made it part of their annual budget. So we're going to pay for it differently going forward, starting next fiscal year. But we, thanks to our Education Outreach Committee, Director Meggs and Director Kelly getting this underway. It was Director Kelly's idea to do the cable TV originally. And we established that relationship. And now that's being handed off next year to CMSA to manage. But it will continue 2 times a year for 3 months. So anyway, I thought you'd be interested in that. Thank you for your support of that. Yeah.
Just a quick question. Are you sharing, these metrics are awesome. Are you sharing that with the other 8 agencies so that they know how important it is to them as well?
Yeah, absolutely. We forward this information right to them and for them to share with their boards. And I think that's part of the package that we pay for. And it cost us $1,342 for 3 months. When we split it that 9 ways, it's pretty cost effective. All right.
We deserve an Oscar. We deserve an Oscar.
Okay. Good for you guys. Thank you very much, for your support in that.
It'll be an Emmy. It'll be an Emmy. It's on TV, but that's okay.
Emmy. Good. All right. I'd like to share one other thing here. I struggle with GoToMeeting and switching with different attachments. Maybe Julia, you can make me not the presenter and then make me the presenter again, because I know I can get to the document that way. Yeah, and bear with me. So the next thing I want to show you is about the easement initiative and some metrics. So what you can see with this document, Patrick, and it is St. Patrick's Day, and I would like to recognize St. Patrick Filippelli of our staff, who's our data management guru. And he helped develop the web portal for the easement initiative. We mailed brochures about easement facts, and lots of people contributed to this effort, including Andrea. She did a nice review to make sure we were legally sound in what we were telling people about easements. And so we mailed out a letter, brochure, and developed a website around March 2nd, okay, about 2 weeks ago. It went to people's mailboxes. 3,300 people have easements on their property in our district. And of those, we got 448 people in 2 weeks have responded to give us their contact information so that we can contact them in advance of doing our routine maintenance on private property, getting into manholes and that sort of thing. And we also educate people, with the brochure about reminding them not to build buildings on top of sewers and cover over manholes and make sure we can have access through their private property. So it's going well. I think that's over 14% response rate so far. And here's some statistics, over 94% of the respondents are the actual homeowner. We've gotten, 13 tenants have given us their information because we want to contact the people that are living there. And property managers are part of the mix. The percent according to community, Fairfax, Greenbrae, Kentfield, Larkspur, Ross, et cetera, that's pretty, those number of respondents are proportional to the number of easements, easement sewers. Greenbrae has a lot of easement sewers. So these percentages don't mean these communities are necessarily responding at different rates. It's more that the total percentage of the respondents, there's just more easements in San Anselmo and Greenbrae than other parts of the district. And just some other more breakdown, most of these are improved single family residences, but there's some multifamily and commercial respondents in the response so far. So I think, according to our outreach folks, the 14% response in 2 weeks is not bad. It's pretty good. And it's a lot easier than hanging door hangers. Can you imagine our staff going around to 448 houses and hanging those door hangers? So that's what we accomplished, at least in the first 2 weeks. And there's been other positive outreach. Okay, you can discontinue the presenting now. Thank you, Julia.
Can I just add a couple of things?
raising her hand? Oh, so
Yeah, I raised my hand. I just want to add a couple of things about this program. I think it's a fabulous effort. A lot of credit goes to general manager for, you know, just pulling all of this together, and Patrick for stop for a minute. Okay. So I get copied on the emails that the district receives in response to the letter that we send out, and I just wanted to share a couple of them. I think they're great. Hi, I got your letter and I'm currently overseas. My property is managed by fill in the blank while I'm away. Any access you need should be fine, though it helps to let renters know if you'll be going through the yard, please. Any inquiries, please put it to them. However, I will always give you access, of course. Signed, property owner's name and address. And then here is another one. Hi there. I received your easement mailing last week. I want to let you know that you could always have access to the easement in our yard. Please feel free to access it anytime and without any approval from anyone in our house. We would never want to stand in the way of your work. And then, you know, for your information, the easement can be found behind yada, blah, 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 blah. Thank you so much. And please contact me with any questions. So just a couple of samples of the 400 plus, you know, emails and telephone calls that we've received from these property owners who really responded very favorably to this outreach effort. So I just wanted to say, you know, again, a lot of credit to Steve Moore for putting this all together, you know, to Patrick, NV5, who also helped us, you know, with the design, and Christina for putting together all of the mailings and getting them all out. And then also for our field guys who are out there actually interacting with our customers on a regular basis and increasing this information, knowledge, and communication with our customer base. It's just been really delightful to watch unfold. So that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, thank you, Felicia. That's very kind. I think this is the goal is communication, plain and simple. You know, being able to give people heads up if they need it, and give them information about what easements are and what they're not. You know, and reminding folks, just because it's not recorded doesn't mean there's not an easement. You know, it doesn't have to be recorded for us to have full lawful access to maintain the public health and environment through maintenance of the system. So it was, you know, I hope it continues to be positive, and our workers do have the brochures with them to give information to people as they're working as well. So we hope that this will be positive. On the outreach front, we also, as you heard last month, we had 3 spills, and they're often connected to debris coming from laterals, for people doing the right thing, cleaning out the laterals, but they'll send stuff down, rocks, roots, and they'll cause overflows in the public system. We sent an outreach letter in Spanish and English to 79 contractors, plumbers, paving contractors, other folks that just work around here that might accidentally discharge into our sewers, and giving them a friendly, we even made a brochure working with Gold Street on this. We mailed, and Christina Velasquez helped me out and mailed out the 79, and we got some positive feedback already on that. Basically, this brochure tells contractors, if you lose control of anything that goes into this public sewer, call us immediately, and we will, at no charge, come out gladly and clean our sewers where you tell us to. You know, please, you're a partner in preventing overflows, and just give us the information. I mentioned this to the water board staff, and they said, yeah, we told collection system agencies to do that back in 2005, you know, to reach out to their plumbers, you know, to prevent overflows, because they recognized that just 16 years ago, this is an issue. What it tells me is that, okay, you know, this is just something we need to commit to regular outreach, right? But we're, you know, we restarted it. Like I said, you know, Manny Vigil translated the letter into Spanish so that the folks that are Spanish speaking will get the message. So that's another outreach effort this last month. And we already got one plumber call us about that, saying they were following the new protocol. And we said, thank you, you know, you're on the green list. So anyway, I wanted to let you know that was going on. I mentioned the water board, you know, we did meet with them. I mentioned last month, we're going to make a submittal in writing to them at the end of this month that transmits the new infrastructure asset management plan. That's coming along great. We're finalizing that draft of that this week and next in time to transmit on March 31st. And we met with them and they're receptive to our overall approach of documenting CDO compliance. I got the sense I got from the meeting was, yeah, we won't be out from under the CDO on June 30th of this year because there's still work that we're doing going out to bid that we'll talk about later this summer. There's still some more repairs, not many, but we really have a path out of the CDO by the end of this year. It's really appearing I'm very optimistic. So that's going well, and we're on track to deliver. I wanted to let the board know that we received an inquiry. It was a kind of a unique inquiry from our neighbors to the west, the San Geronimo Valley. They have a group there known as the San Geronimo Woodacre Flats Wastewater Group. They made some progress working with the county of Marin to convert some of their they're all on septic systems in the San Geronimo Valley, but some are failing and they have sensitive water resources. You know, it's a tributary of Lagunitas Creek, and which supports coho salmon and swimming holes and, you know, things that failing septic systems can have bad impact on. So they had a plan to do a community sewer system there, but it seemed to have fallen by, hit some roadblocks. And for the first time that I'm aware of, maybe you all as board members have heard from them before, they reached out to our agency to ask if it would be feasible for them to send their wastewater through the Ross Valley Sanitary District to the CMSA plant. And so, you know, I engaged with them and on a sort of a technical level and talked about, you know, sort of the political level. It's very preliminary, but I had talked to a couple of the board members here, and I have the sense that, you know, at this point we can't rule it out technically. I talked with Jason Dow at the treatment plant. He confirmed there's plenty of capacity from the treatment standpoint. So I encourage them to continue the dialogue, you know, to provide some more information to us. I've done a back of the envelope look at our system. There would have to be some capacity upgrades up Sir Francis Drake out of Fairfax, but it's not impossible, and it might be the right solution for that community in the long run. So to give you some numbers, you know, we have 15,700 connections, almost 15,800 connections in our district. There's potentially 1,700 connections in that whole valley, all the way to Lagunitas and Forest Knolls. You know, so 1,700 compared to 15,007, it's a little over 10% increase if that were to eventually happen. Much has to happen between now and then. So I want to let you know that we were approached and that you know, it was a very productive dialogue, and I'm open to putting that on the agenda at some point. But it's too preliminary at this time. I've hit a lot of things. I'll just say we're going to do notice inviting bids for the Butterfield Arroyo to Kenrick project, which includes some work on Lower Fawn Drive and Sleepy Hollow and San Anselmo. And that we're going to issue the notice inviting bids on Thursday, March 25th. And we're going to open bids on April 29th. And we'll hopefully award a contract at the May 19th board meeting for a June 15th pretty firm construction start date to hit a window on Butterfield Road between June 15th and August 15th while school is out. And so we're proceeding in parallel and setting up community outreach as we do with these Butterfield projects. And we're on track. And we're also receiving the SRF funding for that, $4,562,000 low interest loan to do that work. And it meets a requirement of the CDO I just talked about with the water board. Yeah, I've hit a lot of things. I'll say on 1111 Anderson, the new headquarters, we provided comments to the tenant Comcast on Friday. as we go back and forth on the proposed lease on that. So that process is continuing to move forward. And that's it. Sorry for taking so long, but a lot of interesting things. Any questions?
All right, thank you. Item number 10, verbal report by board members and requests for future items. Any board members have any reports or, yes, Doug?
Thank you, President Silla, and Steve, just a comment on the possibility of bringing that additional area in. That's the right thing to do for the environment, bigly. So I'm a huge fan of that. It would be expensive, and they'd have to bear the expense, but or somehow long-term loans or something. But at any rate, it's the right thing to do. So 3 quick things. I asked General Manager Moore to arrange for a tour of San Quentin Village lift station, because I wanted to make sure that if we're taking on San Quentin Village, that we're not taking on equipment that's in disrepair. He arranged with Jason Dow, the General Manager of CMSA, to do just that. We met there February 26th. Jason was there, Steve was there, and each district brought 2 employees. I think it was 2 or 3. It's quite a crowd. I'm happy to report that that facility is in exceptionally good condition. It is a county facility, but the county was having CMSA care for it, and they have in a great way. The equipment is new. Everything is in great condition. They brought over plans. They of course said, we'll give you these digitally, but we have some actual maps and the pipes, and we opened up everything and we looked under the hood, and it was fantastic. So just briefly at that. Future agenda item request, I'd like to see if we can put together some sort of an agenda item. Due to COVID, many of our restaurants have operated completely differently. And as you know, we bill them annually based on their water consumption from MMWD during December, January, and February. Now that that time has passed, I'd be really interested to see what we're going to find as a result of that. I suspect that there's substantially less water usage, and that therefore there may be a possibility of getting substantially less payments. I just want to know whether that's true or not. So I'd like to have a heads up on that rather than wait till later on. And then, sometimes these things, Brown Acts are challenging. I just wanted to say on a personal note, my company was acquired by a large competitor. Everybody in my company now works for the new company, and I'm absolutely thrilled. So just a personal note.
Congratulations. You're not moving, I take it. Okay. Anybody else have any reports or requests for future items? Yes, Pam.
My neighbor put in an ADU, and he discovered that his lateral had to go all the way down the hill to the next street from Upper Cypress to Lower Madrone. So he said everything went smoothly till he heard about the lateral. But he was so, said the guys and all the people working with RVSD was so exceptional. It made up for the pain of having to put it along that lateral that went all the way down the hill. So that was a good story.
Thank you. That's nice. Congratulations, staff. Okay. Item number 11, consent calendar. Does anyone have anything they'd like to pull from the consent calendar? Yes, Tom?
A couple of tiny corrections on the minutes. On 6 of 20, item 8, it says, the second line, he also reported that they discussed the grant appeal. And I think we should put the sewer lateral grant appeal. And then on page 9, Pamela got to vote twice on item 14. We've got her down there twice. And those are just little minor corrections that I had. And that's all.
Thank you, Tom.
Director Gaffney.
It was item 14. Do you see it in the votes?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. If you want, I know that you're stopping by the district office next week. If you wrote those down on paper, I would love a copy just to make sure I get them correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
One quick thing, Julia, I was at the finance committee yesterday and we can't talk. So I did see, and on the finance minutes, I guess from last month, the meeting ended at like late at night. I think it should be AM instead of PM, something like that.
She's
Thank
right. You have it at 11:02 p.m. Marathon.
Quite a long finance committee meeting.
That would be quite a thing, wouldn't it? A finance committee that went to.
I would want off the finance committee if that were typical.
A casual 12 hours.
All right, anything else to pull off the consent calendar, or can I have a motion?
I move we approve the consent calendar.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Doug. Julia, a roll call vote on that, please.
Yes, thank you. Borstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Director Meggs.
Yes, I do see another error in the minutes, but that's okay. I'll send you an email, I guess.
Thank you very much. Scylla,
Yes,
unanimous vote. Thank you.
thank you. All right. Item number 12, consideration of adopting a communications and engagement strategy for potential disposition of property at 2000 Larkspur Landing Circle. Steve.
Great. Yes, and I'll introduce the project team here momentarily. Just a quick overview. We've had 3 informational presentations about 2000 Larkspur Landing Circle to learn about the constraints and opportunities around potential disposition of that property with respect to transaction structures, what land use entitlements currently exist and what are under consideration by the city of Larkspur, as well as the Surplus Land Act, state law for disposition of public agency lands that involve making it available to other public agencies or affordable housing developers, and what the processes are associated with that. So with that in mind, we wanted to lay the groundwork on the facts of the situation before we engage in a public outreach strategy. And also, we need final sign off from the US EPA on the adequacy of the cleanup efforts for the PCB contamination on the site. And as I explained in the staff report, we aren't quite there yet. They are reviewing the report. I got an update today that we will receive comments and questions this Friday, March 19th. So we look forward to that, and that's one step forward in finalizing that report. At that point, when we get the clearance from US EPA, based on input from the board members during these informational presentations we've been giving, staff thought it would be useful for the Century Urban team to put together a draft strategy for public communications and engagement regarding the disposition of the property. And so that's what you have before you today, is for your consideration a strategy that you could adopt on behalf of the district, and that staff and the Century Urban team could implement. So with that, I'd like to introduce Bryant Sparkman, who's the project leader, and he's brought along some of the team, including Lynette and Ross, who I'd like him to introduce. Thank you, Bryant.
Great. Thank you, GM Moore. We're excited and pleased to be here with you all today. I also want to wish all the board members and staff happy St. Patrick's Day. Hopefully you all can enjoy that as well. today with an adult libation. As Steve mentioned, we prepared as part of the RFP a multidisciplinary and holistic team comprised of a handful of different firms. And each of these firms has a distinct expertise. And what we do as the prime consultant at Sanitary Urban is draw upon those resources and to call upon them when needed to create value for the district. So as a quick reminder, we have a handful of firms that we on our team, which include CBRE, valuation and advisory services for market analysis and appraisal services. We also have Urban Planning Partners, Inc., which provides land use, entitlement assistance, and community outreach. The third firm that we have on our on-call and as-needed list is PFM Financial Advisors. They provide public financing strategies and specifically work with tax-exempt bonds. On the design and architectural front, we're working with Levy Design Partners, with Toby Levy, who's one of the leading principals of the firm and an exceptional architect. And last but not least, we have a firm called Town Hall, specializing in public affairs. So we're really excited and pleased to continue to be assisting the district as part of this process. And as Steve mentioned, right now, step one is really kind of having the potential site deemed surplus property, and that has not yet occurred. So we are still in the process of kind of getting where we need to be in order to make that happen. So we have prepared, with the assistance of Urban Planning Partners and Town Hall, I'll refer to it as a draft example and illustrative public communications and engagement strategy for the potential disposition of the 2000 Larkspur Landing property. Lynette Diaz, who I think you all will remember from some of our board meetings, she's the lead principal over Urban Planning Partners, and she has extensive experience in land use, environmental planning, entitlement services, and community outreach. And Urban Planning Partners is a firm that is 100% women-owned, and Lynette has been leading the firm in land use for over 25 years. So we're excited to have Lynette with us here today, who's kind of helped to draft this plan. In addition to Lynette, we also have Ross Gearing. Ross is a principal with Town Hall. They are a public service, a full-service public affairs consultancy. Town Hall assists with outreach and coalition building and various communications. And Ross just so happens to be a Marin native and a recognized leader in public affairs and continues to reside in Marin. So what we thought we might do today is just kind of briefly introduce this draft memorandum for the board's consideration. So I'd like to do is just kind of hand off to either you, Lynette, or Ross to help assist.
Great. Thank you, Bryant. I'm going to go ahead and start, and then Ross may add in a little bit, and we'll be available to answer any questions the board may have. So good evening. Thank you all for having us here.
Before you get started, Lynette, Julia, can I have control to share my screen? I think it's all in your staff packets, but it might be helpful to pull up the memo.
And Lynette, it's Pam Meggs here. Can we see you?
You know, I'm having a challenge with that. I'm sorry. I had to do this through my car, and originally I was able to show the video, and now let me try. Oh, wait, can you guys see? It lets me show it, but it doesn't. Wait, share my webcam. Does that work? Can you see me now?
Yes.
You
Yes,
can.
Lynette, we can see you just fine now. Looks like we're
Okay,
good.
great. really can see a big part of my hand though. There we go. That's a little bit better. So we'll see if I can manage this. Apologies. Transit, I actually had to attend a meeting in person today in Truckee. One of my first in-person since COVID meetings. And so it didn't work out well for me to be sitting at my desk, unfortunately. So, all right. Well, thank you for having us here tonight. We're pleased to have the opportunity to work with the board and district on this property. It's been a long time in the making, and so I want to just take a little bit of time to walk through the draft strategy memo that we drafted. And then, like I said, Ross and I will be able to answer questions, and we worked on this together. And, you know, Ross really brings the local expertise. I have some Marin experience, but he is in the thick of it all the time and really brings that local expertise. And ours is more broader on community engagement and such. So one of the things that's always really critical to me is to really look at, when we're talking about an engagement and communications strategy, is at the end of the process, we all hope it goes smoothly and it gets approved and you guys bring a developer on board and it moves forward. But independent of that, if we look back at the process and we have people from the community and your ratepayers at the dais, what would they say and what would the board members say if this process is really successful? So we took a preliminary look, made some preliminary suggestions on that, working with staff and our team. And really, we want to, at the end of the process, make sure that the ratepayers, the community, interested agencies, and city decision makers, and who we collectively refer to as stakeholders throughout the memo, are kept informed about the EPA release of the land use restrictions, the potential decision to declare the site as surplus property, that we're adhering and conforming to the Surplus Land Act and all that goes along with that. And then we want to keep them informed and provide opportunities for input as appropriate relative to the property disposition. An RFQ, the RFQ and RFP process, agreement to lease or sell to a third-party project developer, and then the timing of updated land use entitlements, if any. And then finally, we want to provide opportunity for the ratepayers to express preference relative to an ongoing revenue stream versus a one-time revenue source, which would result from selling the property. Actually, that wasn't final. I have three more. Stakeholders have an opportunity to provide input to the existing entitlement and or potential future uses of the site, including preservation of areas previously dedicated as open space and a development plan that will not include the district headquarter facilities at the site. So, you know, looking at the existing entitlements that are on the site, we recognize that there's going to need to be some change there. And that's the element of it that will be up for, you know, discussion and public input and such, recognizing the other entitlement is in place. And then the district's direction and decisions are informed and responsive to the input received. And that's kind of the final element of, like, is this a successful engagement process? And then there's 4 elements that we've laid out preliminarily related to the strategy. And that includes what are the communication materials that we envision being prepared and presented and shared during that time, a community survey, a series of community forums throughout the disposition process. And so just briefly, I'll talk about each one of those. The communication materials, you know, pretty traditional and straightforward, but these would really, we would prepare them in advance of the EPA's decision to certify the project site for unrestricted land uses, so that we are prepared once that decision is made to quickly put out a media release, an article in the Marin IJ, update the frequently asked questions with which the district has done a really good job at preparing to date. And so we would just be supplementing and adding on and assisting staff in that area. And then finally updating relaunching the Larkspur Landing and project website on the district's website. So that would really, those would be the primary communication materials. Then we would do a community survey, and we would provide a link to that in the media outreach in the GM bulletin that goes out regularly. And then from that, we would the survey would really focus on collecting feedback related to the existing entitlements, potential land uses, and revenue creation and diversification strategies at the property. The third primary component would be the community forums. And we have laid out preliminarily 2, and that first would take place following the survey results, and so also following the EPA's release of the land use restrictions. But prior to the board's decision related to surplus land. And it would be in an informational format, likely Zoom, and as part of one of your meetings. And really the outcome for that meeting that we're looking for, our stakeholders are notified of the EPA release, they understand the disposition process, and have further opportunity to provide input on potential uses and transaction strategies. We see an additional community forum happening, and that would be post the board's decision to classify the property as surplus land and commencement of the disposition process. And really for that, the focus of that effort at the end would be that stakeholders are informed on the outcome of the disposition process and have an opportunity to provide input. So that's an overview of it, hopefully not too much or too little detail. And there is also a schedule that we've outlined, and the yellow is areas where it would be put forth in the GM bulletin and the press release, and then the blue relates to community forums and board study sessions. And with that, I wanted to see, Ross, do you have anything to add?
The one thing I'll add is this is really the ramp up to initiating all of this outreach. I think there's going to be a lot of proactive communication throughout the process because it is going to be a lengthy process. This site has a history that we are all aware of locally. And so we will not only be reaching out to the Marin IJ, but there's other outlets as well that we'll be reaching out to, making sure we're reaching as many people as possible. And as new milestones come up with regard to the process, we will be doing proactive outreach to the media as well as to the ratepayers. So I think we can be confident that this plan really just is the launching point to all that. And we just want to make sure we're heading in the right direction with your feedback, and then we can formalize it and make sure we're off and running as soon as the EPA gives their okay.
So with that, we're available for questions.
Any questions, board members? Doug.
I have a couple of questions. Thank you. First off, I see the IJ and the press release. I mentioned last time, and it's not, I wasn't actually kidding. I would like to see a ginormous sign on the fence, for sale. This may be released for sale. Contact or look at www.rbsd.org for more information. A lot of cars pass that every day. But I'd also, you mentioned the IJ, of course, but what about the San Francisco Chronicle and the local TV stations? And we already advertise, as was mentioned earlier in the meeting, on cable TV. I mean, this is a a beautiful, beautiful property. And it seems to me it'd be worth our investment to put some, maybe a month of a small advertisement. You know, it wouldn't take a lot of money, just a drone and General Manager Moore talking about it on both Marin and San Francisco cable TV. A really great investment, I think, would pay back many times over. Is there any thoughts on those?
Well, I'll just speak on the media portion of it. Yes, the Chronicle is certainly an outlet we'll want to pitch to, along with the broadcast. We focused on the IJ just for this initial launch because it all depends on how newsworthy an item is. And I think because the ratepayers are here right in Marin, that the IJ is most likely to cover it. So we would likely give them a real detailed pitch and sit down with them and walk through this process and all the informational hearings that have happened to date. But certainly places like the Chronicle and broadcast outlets will be part of the outreach as well. And with regard to the sign, I think that's something we discussed with staff at the appropriate time. I think a couple steps probably need to happen before something like that sign goes out, but that's certainly, and I've heard that in a previous hearing where you had mentioned that. So that's on the radar.
And cable TV?
Sorry, Doug, just a point of order with regards to the sign is that it likely will require City of Larkspur approval for signage.
I'm sure it would, and I'm sure they'd be happy to accommodate us, but yes, you're right. Any thoughts on cable TV pitch?
Are you referring to maybe a commercial like what you're doing with some of these other, we haven't thought of that. I think we'd have to circle back as a team and see how that would work.
Would you do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's fine. One thing I wanted to point out, or just put this on Andrea, our district council's radar, as far as the timing of announcing things vis-a-vis the Surplus Land Act, because it's not. Yes.
If I may, I understand that, and I want to comply with all federal, state, and local laws. But I think you could have an advertisement, and again, I'd agree with you, leaving it to Andrea, saying this may be a property that we may consider talking about as being excess. You know, it doesn't have to say this is done and it's for sale. It can announce that we're looking into this. My idea is to bring more people in as early as possible who are curious. And that's why I would say San Francisco cable if we were to do an ad, not just Marin, because that's where the money is.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great point. It'll most certainly, Board Member Kelly, be taken under consideration, and we appreciate your comments on that.
Pam, do you have questions?
I had a couple. So who's going to be the main facilitator to communicate and talk with the community in these forums?
Steve, do you want to address that, or you want me to address that?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I'm curious to how you'd answer it. You know, I don't think staff. We don't have a set vision on that. You know, we understand we have a role to play, but we really do want to rely on the team's expertise as well.
Yeah, I mean, typically how we do that, Pam, is it's a pretty collective effort, and we look at really what makes the most sense for that meeting and the topic and the presentation of the material. And so, I mean, Ross will take the lead on all the press communications, whether or not he'll be the person actually talking versus I would expect that would be somebody from the district who we would want that to be. But in the community forums, we'll do presentations and work with district staff, at the time to decide based on the topic and who we anticipate the audience being and the desired outcome of the meeting, who makes the most sense. And that's one of the things our team is super committed to, is like, we don't have a one size fits all. We don't have, this is this is how you should do it. We want to collaborate with you and figure out what makes the most sense for the current circumstance. And it can change based on the level of opposition, who's out there, who's, you know, there's a lot of variables we want to consider in making this decision. So as we get closer to the meetings, the forums, we would make those decisions, and any material we draft, we will present to staff for review and finalization.
Okay, and yeah, I mean, there's other avenues to get the word out. You know, I think all the certain towns could announce this at their meetings, their monthly meetings, but time is really going to speed up quickly, and I'm a little concerned that we probably should really jump on that, like Doug was saying. I agree with Doug, we've got to get the word out, and there's all different ways to do it. I don't particularly like Nextdoor. I think it's trashy, and I don't particularly think it's a good idea. So I'm just being straight up. Save your time. And
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. It gets a lot of eyes.
Okay.
It may be trashy, but it gets a lot of eyes.
What? What?
It gets a lot of eyes. A lot of people go to Nextdoor. I don't disagree that it's a little trashy, but I don't really, that's not really my interest. My interest is having people see this everywhere, anywhere. Yeah. I mean, you know, put it on cups at Pete's for all I care.
Yeah, McDonald's. Yeah, somewhere. Okay. So the other thing too is, and I talked to Steve a little bit about this, is perhaps you need to send a card when the survey, before the survey is, you know, but there are going to be people who do not have computers. I just want to say that there's not a lot, but there are those people, and especially the elderly. I know people on my block here, they don't use a computer. So I just wanted to throw that out. And how did we fund these consultants, Steve? Was this all coming out of the communications, out of the budget for these extra fees?
No. This is related to, we have a code that we have for consulting services that we use.
So how much is in that fund? Sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm just curious because I know these things can really ramp up expensive money. And
our finance manager.
I'd be happy to address that. I think actually I would say that it was anticipated in Bryant's budget.
Yes.
These are contractors of Bryant, so the board considered Bryant's scope of work, and communication was a part of that scope of work. So Bryant, I'm gonna.
No, absolutely. And board member, thank you, Felicia. And board member Miz, it's a good question. So we do have a master consultancy agreement under the phase 1 scope of services to cover all of the stuff we're currently doing. But to your point, you know, to the extent you have a more advanced community engagement program or plan, you know, that would be something we need to probably have some form of a phase 2 scope of services. But for right now, everything is under the current master contract. And so we have additional budget for Lynette. We have additional budget for Ross in addition to the consultancy team. And, you know, as you interviewed me, and I remember board member Miggs, you asked me some tough questions when we were having these conversations early on. I did, and so one of your questions was, well, how do you come up with, you know, these additional phases of work? And really, it's at the board and staff's discretion. Does this make sense? Does this create value? And is this additive to the actual process? So here we are today, and really, I'll refer to it as a matriculation process, with Lynette and Ross kind of guiding us on what is a potential plan. And this is upfront, so this isn't extensive. I won't call this kind of the full entitlement community engagement. This is more kind of the keep everybody apprised, gather the stakeholders' feedback and input into the process, so that the district truly knows what the community is looking for and wants. So I don't know if that answered your question, but we do have a master contract and everything's within that contract right now.
Okay, so it's under the umbrella of you.
That's correct. You got it.
Yeah. Then, last.
And I could add that, sorry to interrupt, but I could add that we have a community outreach budget. And some of these ideas that we're talking about right now might be greater than, may entail some expenses like, postcards, for instance, right? And we have $250,000 annual budget for community outreach that we can tap into for those type of expenses because we're under budget for the year so far in that category. And even though we spent a fair amount on easement on that other outreach I reported on earlier in the board meeting, about contractor outreach and easement outreach, even with those expenses, we still have available budget in community outreach.
Okay, that's great. That's what I wanted to hear.
And I'll just address a couple of the specific comments you made, which were great and very helpful. The communications via the cities, we did list that in our memo. I didn't specifically mention it in my presentation, but I think that's a great way to do this. My experience with Nextdoor is I have similar concerns, but if the district or the city post it on their Nextdoor page, I think it has a little bit different effect than if an individual posts it. And, it does get a lot of people on it. Absolutely, we need to have paper versions of the surveys available, and so we will make sure to put wherever we notice it that they could request a paper copy. Or come to, if we get to where the district is open, they could come to the district and complete one there. So we'll make sure we address those items.
Thank you. Other
Come
board
to the district? Did you say come to the district?
to fill out a paper form if we're open, she said.
Right.
Where the offices is.
And last, with the experience, Lynette and Ross, have you done these kind of complicated political intents? Can be. Have you done these kind of, these kind of situations?
I'll answer on my end. Yes, that's typically all I work in is land use and local land use, a lot of Marin County projects. So I'm quite familiar with the process here locally. And so I can anticipate what's to come. What's interesting about this is that a potential developer down the road is going to be actually going through their own process. So for us, it's really informing ratepayers and making sure everybody is educated on the process.
Absolutely. And yes, we have done a lot of them, and we've done them virtually as well. We just we're in the middle of a big one with the city of Santa Cruz, and we just held a large community forum last week, and it got really great press coverage. We were very nervous about it, I will say, just because it's new approaches, and we got really, really great feedback, and like I said, press coverage as well. So this is not new to us.
Yeah. Was that selling property?
It was not selling property, but it was rezoning and development standards for property to increase density, which they have been trying to do for about 8 years now and have not succeeded. And so we've really diversified who we reached out to and how we're doing it. We're not using an advisory committee. A lot of things that are different and new for the city, aside from having to do it all virtually. So we took a lot of time working with them to kind of learn what they had done. And so we're looking in the past what you guys have done and what has worked and what hasn't worked and where we can try to improve and, make it as good as we can.
Thank you.
I wonder if I'm sure you are aware that we work with NV5 too, and they handle most of our communication with our customers in the community, branding, that sort of thing. Will you work collaboratively with them? Or have you, thought about that? Or Steve, have you thought about that?
I am very happy to do that. We hadn't really talked specifically about that yet, but that's great. I would love to work with them.
Yeah, Lynette mentioned, that the communication materials to date are pretty polished, and NV5 has helped us with that, and so it's been we've brought it along to this point, and they're actually, I have an email from them saying, tell us when to go to the next step, based on this board meeting, and so it should be fairly seamless. They're like an extension of us.
I mean, our favorite way to work is in partnership with people that are there and working on it together versus just saying, you should do this. So
Right.
No problem.
Yeah, and I mean, they have templates and everything for the way our materials look, and have coordinated community outreach events for us. The guy who ran around with all the water bottles when we had our pump station inauguration. So they've been really wonderful for us so far, and I'm sure they have a lot of lessons learned, and would make your job easier if you were to work with them. Yeah.
That's a great point. Thank you very much, Director Silla. And another example is even on this Larkspur Landing cleanup, they worked for us to get the word out. We had 2 seasons of cleanup, so two times they mailed things out to the local neighborhood. So they've got the mailing list, and as Director Silla says, there's a branding for our outreach materials. There's a look, it's
Yep.
Gold and blue theme, and so we'll definitely leverage that.
And I think they also
Great.
manage our how we do use Nextdoor, which I know, like varies from place to place, but that's how our general manager's bulletin comes across my Nextdoor, as I understand, through NV5. So, yeah.
There are several, 26,000 odd. I mean, I forget the latest number, but our monthly Nextdoor message reaches 26,000 recipients. So it's not that they open them, but they're getting out there. So we don't get a lot of thanks either, but we get them. If you do it right, the first few letters, Larkspur Landing property, it can be an eye grabber, and so those who are interested can click on it.
Yeah, I mean, we have.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to suggest that Steve also reach out personally to all of the town managers, not just those in the Ross Valley, but there's only 11 of them. I'd ask them to mention it at their meetings.
I have one more question. Sorry to drag this out. I don't see in the packet a contract with these agencies, consultants. I see nothing about some kind of contract.
It's all under Century Urban, as I understand it. This is a component of the Century Urban contract that we've already approved.
Yes.
But there, Andrea, just a quick question. Is that okay to do it like that? It kind of leaves the money open-ended, and we don't have control over what their contract looks like, because I would assume contracts are different from Urban Century. Am I wrong?
I don't have the original Century Urban contract in front of me, but my recollection is that it was the board's understanding that Century Urban would be bringing in the resources it needed as part of this process, perhaps through subcontracts. And so that was the understanding when that contract was approved. Maybe Bryant, you can confirm that.
Yeah, Andrea, that's 100% correct. So there's a consulting agreement with Century Urban as prime. And so board member Miggs, we have sub-consultant agreements in place with urban planning partners in addition to town hall. So we've allocated a portion of the budget that was approved by the district for each of the sub-consultants. So we're still well within those budgets, those budgeted amounts. But to your point, in the event there's additional kind of scope of services, whether that's an advancing of a community engagement strategy with Lynette and Ross and teaming up with NV5, you would want to revisit, an additional, phase of work, so to speak, if and when that is desired by the board and staff.
Okay,
So that's
great.
kind of the approach we've taken.
Okay. I couldn't remember.
Yes,
So-
Michael. Pardon me. Yeah.
I just have to say, I am so pleased with the orderly fashion that and the amount of carefulness that we are doing here. The last time, I was not around the last time the property was disposed of, but I don't think the amount of caution at that time was like we're doing now. And by doing this step by step, each piece being so careful, I feel that, I hope that we're not going to have any missteps. And by taking the time to do this, I'm just so pleased at how we're doing this. And I feel very confident that we'll have a good outcome from it, whatever that is when we decide. But then nobody's going to say we left any stone unturned. So thank you, everybody.
Yes, Doug.
I just want to point out, I agree with Michael. I also remember the discussion, Bryant, we had with Sanitary Urban and the budgets, and I'm fine with that. We did ask about, making sure this doesn't go wildly out of control, but that was all discussed and it was all agreed to. I remember it distinctly. And again, as far as the budget, I think that we have an obligation to our ratepayers to do the very, very best job we can at publicizing all of this, including, as I say, publicizing the fact that we may be considering sometime in the future a board measure or a board agenda item to discuss whether we're going to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The sooner, the better, the wider the net, the better. And I think that will pay off for the ratepayers and the district more than any small little budget problem that we may have going down the road.
Great. Thank you, Doug, Board Member Kelly. And I agree with you 100%. And I think this is kind of twofold in a way. One is getting the word out to the community, to the ratepayers as to what's occurring. And then kind of part and parcel with that is, once this has kind of been deemed surplus property, once the Surplus Lands Act has been adhered to, is really then getting the word out to the broader institutional real estate community. So I'm in full support of everything you're saying and in full agreement. Thank you.
The only thing I might add, a concern that I have about when we cast that net wide is who at the district is going to be responsible for taking, how are we going to take those requests for information? Because I do think, Doug, that it is going to be a huge response to this. I've been forwarding some requests for information that were sent to me. I don't know if other board members are getting them, but I send them all to Steve and Felicia. But I think we need to have a plan that when we do this, who is going to be the point person? Is it somebody at Urban or is it somebody at the district who's going to take them and say this is junk and this is good and what needs to be responded to? I mean, when we cast that net, I just want to make sure that we've got the resources available to pull the fish out of the water.
Yes, I think that's
very clever what I just said.
It's a very good point. And I think the way that we've conceived this with staff, and I will defer 100% to GM Moore and Assistant GM Newhouse, but the approach that we're taking on this is that Century Urban would act as the clearinghouse, so to speak, to review, vet, and evaluate each and every potential offer that comes in, because there's so many different nuances and pieces to the offers, whether it's development experience, financial capacity, a good steward to the community, a like-minded partner to Ross Valley Sanitary District. There's so many factors that weigh into this. So, this is still evolving because we're very, very early on in the process. But our firm, Century Urban, is geared up and prepared and excited to act as that clearinghouse to assist the district as needed.
Thank you, Brian. There are these different audiences, and it's easy to start conflating them a little bit. What this item is before the board's consideration tonight is a strategy to engage the community in Ross Valley Sanitary District, the ratepayers, the interested community, and that is a little broader than the Ross Valley Sanitary District boundary, that's interested in the disposition of this property because of its regional significance. And it's a public engagement. So that's one thing that we're talking about here. And it's easy to conflate that with another outreach goal, which is to get this out to the development community, those who would be interested in partnering with us or transacting with us in some way. So that's a different thing. That's where we might get the tidal wave of inquiries that we clearly hired Century Urban to help us field. That's one thing. But what we're talking about tonight is not that. What we're talking about tonight is engaging the community in a meaningful way with the right touch, so that the board has a sense of what the community's general interests are, the diversity of it, and if there are any prevailing sentiments in the community. That number one, your ratepayers, of course, you're elected officials, so you decide your priorities, but I'm sure you're interested in what the people who elected you think, right? That's the ratepayers. And then the broader community in Marin County and how this fits in the community. So those are the people we've directed at Century Urban and Urban Planning Partners and Town Hall to help us try to engage in a meaningful way, so you as board members feel like we did our best effort to engage the public in your decisions.
Right. Yeah. This isn't advertising the real estate property yet. The real estate guys are going to help us with that. This is nobody says, I didn't know they were going to sell that property, and how did that happen? Yes. Great. All right. So before us is a recommendation that we adopt this communications and engagement strategy for potential disposition of the property. May I? Oh, yes, Pam.
I think you need to go out to the public.
Oh, absolutely. Do we have public?
You do.
Okay. Thank you for pointing that out. I was remiss.
I guess Liesl doesn't want to talk.
Okay.
I move that we adopt communications and engagement strategy for potential disposition of property at 2000 Larkspur Landing Circle.
And I would second that.
Thank you. Julia, roll call vote, please.
Yes, thank you, President Silla. Borstein?
Absolutely, yes.
Gaffney?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Thanks.
You broke up. I guess you called my name. Yes.
Thank you. Silla?
Yes.
Unanimous vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us.
Have a good night. Moving on
bye.
to agenda item number 13, consideration of adopting resolution 21-1601, approving final acceptance and authorizing the general manager to file notice of completion for the FY 2019-20 Force Main Appurtenance Project with Trinet Construction Incorporated. Steve.
Thank you, President Silla. Very good. And we went over this with some detail in the Finance Committee. This is a project where we upgraded 8 appurtenances to the force main pressure sewer system. And these are valves that enable isolation of certain portions of the system in the unlikely event of another utility working near a force main and breaking it and causing a spill, which is a constant threat to us and any other sanitary district. The ability to valve off sections of the force main and cut off the flow is pretty important for mitigating environmental damage And so we gave ourselves a lot of capacity through just these simple measures of taking inoperable valves, making them operable. So we can sleep better at night knowing that we can respond more effectively to emergencies if they should so occur. And it also gives us the ability to do more effective maintenance. So we're really thrilled to be closing out this project that you've helped us along the way. And TriNet turned out to be a good contractor all in all, really kept us pretty close to budget. And, it was an interesting beginning. They barely came in with a minute and a half left on the bid and came in and submitted their bid, and they were the low bidder. And it was down to the wire. And so it's quite an ignominious beginning, that we weren't real sure, but we did check them out. They hadn't worked in Marin much. They've done work in Hillsborough. In the end, it worked out as a good partnership, and no surprises. We had some delays that were COVID related, honestly, in terms of manufacturing, but we worked through any, neighborly concerns, especially with Bon Air Center, and we gave them a nice driveway outside of the Bank of America there. I thought it was worth adding the extra costs just for leaving things off with a good note with them. And we think we give them a very good product. So you can, next time you're down by Pump Station 13 over by Molly Stone's, go check out that nice driveway and the hatch that we put in for the force main, the valve, the air release valve maintenance. Now our staff have a much better time of opening that hatch instead of a manhole cover to do that maintenance work. So we're really pleased with the overall project. We recommend that you authorize me to file the notice of completion for this project, and it also was a water board CDO requirement. So we got another one done with this.
Thank you. Board members, any questions or comments? Now we have no public, so. All right. Yes, Tom.
Is it appropriate for me to move approval of, I move that we adopt resolution 12-1601 approving final acceptance and authorizing the general manager file notice of completion for the fiscal year 2019-20 force main appurtenance project with TriNet Construction Incorporated, and to authorize release of the 5% retention at the 35-day room period.
I'll second that if we change it from adopt resolution number 12-1601 to 21-1601.
Did I say 12?
Yeah.
I'll accept that.
You're living in the past, Tom.
As written in the agenda. All right, Julia, roll call vote, please.
Yes, thank you. Borstein,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Kelly, Director Kelly, did
Yes.
you vote? Oh, thank you. Megs,
Yes.
Philip,
Yes,
unanimous vote. Thank you.
thank you. Item number 14, consideration of adopting resolution 21-1602, adopting the provisions of CMSA ordinance 2021-1, regulating the control of fats, oils, and grease into wastewater collection system and rescinding RVSD ordinance number 62. Steve, do you want to tell us about this?
Sure, yes. You probably know, but every month I meet with the general managers of the Joint Powers Authority, including Jason Dow and RJ Swoko of SD2 and Doris Toy of San Rafael Sanitation District. And so this is one of our items that came up a couple months ago, and as our representatives on CMSA know, the fog ordinance is being updated to bring in some terminology from the Bay Area Pollution Prevention Group of BACWA, Bay Area Clean Water Agencies, just for consistency among fog programs. So CMSA did their updates, and the other two JPA agencies have always used CMSA's ordinance to implement their programs. And CMSA actually conducts fog management for other districts outside of the JPA. So they're the go-to agency in Marin County for fog management. You know, the food service establishments, FSEs. That's one of those acronyms that's unique to the FOG program. And so they manage that permit system, the implementation of the specs for grease interceptors for and there's been some terminology updates, but we made sure, you know, a grease trap is a grease trap, even though they call them hydromechanical grease interceptors, you know, HGIs, but they're really, the contractor knows it's a grease trap, so the parentheses is still in here. That was my contribution, by the way, to keep the grease trap in. So at any rate, there's a history here where management of this district wanted to run its own program in the 2012 timeframe, but the staff to implement it had left, and so the district turned around and asked CMSA to run the program for them again within 5 months. But this ordinance that the district adopted, Ordinance 62, was never really implemented. I scoured the files of those years and found no fog permits. I found one permit for Lincoln Park. I don't know if in San Anselmo, but I don't know if they're still in business, right? So that was all I could find.
It's Madcap now.
Yeah, so
Yeah, it's Madcap now.
So at any rate, I did the due diligence to make sure we weren't leaving a bunch of permit holders in the lurch, and I'm pleased to let you know we didn't. So I think just for the clarity of our program, our sewer system management plan currently has this Ordinance 62 as part of our, you know, how we implement our pollution prevention, and it's just misleading. So I recommend we rescind that ordinance as it was never really used, and go back to an agreement we already have with CMSA to implement the program, and adopt, as the other JPA agencies are going to do the next month, adopt CMSA's new ordinance as our own, you know, as the relevant authoritative ordinance that is implemented in this district. And then if you do adopt that, we will put it on our website under our sewer system management plan. And so that's a brief history of this fog ordinance in RVSD. Happy to answer any.
Yeah. Any questions, board members?
No.
I vaguely remember it coming on the board in 2012, that it was sort of a, we don't like CMSA, so we're going to do things on our own effort. Great. All right. Seeing no questions, I'll entertain a motion.
So I'll do that.
Yeah.
Okay, I move we adopt resolution number 21-1602, adopting provisions of the Fats, Oils, and Grease Ordinance of the Central Marin Sanitation Agency and rescinding ordinance number 62.
Second.
Julia, roll call vote, please.
Yes, thank you. Borstein,
Yes, ma'am.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Ellie? You got it.
Yes.
Thank you. Megs?
Yes.
Priscilla?
Yes.
Unanimous vote. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, item number 15, consideration of adopting disposal of surplus district-owned property. Felicia, this has your name on it. Not that you, not that you have to do it, but.
I'd like to introduce Assistant General Manager Felicia Newhouse.
Okay.
Thank you, Deputy Manager Moore and Director Silla. I'd like to present item 15 to the board this evening regarding approving disposal of surplus district-owned property. These specific items have been identified by staff as no longer used or needed by the district, and that also have a current estimated use value of greater than $1,000. The board approved financial policies allow the district's purchasing agent designated by the general manager to dispose of surplus items owned by the district of a value of less than $1,000 to be determined by staff, but if those items of value of greater than $1,000 must go to the board for review and approval. So we have here a list of, I think, 9 or so items. The year that they were purchased, if they were greater than $5,000 at the time of purchase, then they would have gone on our fixed asset list. If they were less than $5,000 at the time of purchase, we don't have a specific date of purchase. But again, if their value, their current value is greater than $1,000, we're still bringing them to the board to consider if they would like to, if you would like to declare them surplus. So the pictures that are attached to the staff report show the general condition of these items. Many of them, I think I described them to the finance committee as well loved over the years. We certainly got a lot of use out of a lot of this equipment, particularly in the days that we were doing pipe bursting. We don't do that type of work anymore, and we are looking to reduce our footprint where much of this equipment is stored at the Larkspur Landing property. So we're hoping that the auction house that we've used in the past for our vehicles, who also deals in used equipment, will be interested in taking this equipment and giving us the auction value for it, again, upon approval of the board for disposition of the surplus. And that concludes my report. If Steve would like to add anything. I think we did also talk to the finance committee about just the amount of work that staff has done putting this together. You know, specifically one of our operations superintendents, Manny Vigil, has really done an exceptional job of identifying a lot of equipment that has been sitting dormant, particularly again at Larkspur Landing over the years, that we really should be and are looking very closely at moving out of the way. So, Steve?
That's right. And the contemplation of the move to the 1111 Anderson building, Manny also helped review what was in the warehouse down the street in the Anderson warehouse that we use. And so some of those items are off the shelves there, as well as the Larkspur Landing property. I think there's a little more footprint in those Anderson warehouse bays than we have in the new building. So, so it was a good exercise to kind of reduce the amount of material we need to move when we move.
What's a saddle fuser?
Yes, thanks. I apologize. Actually, when I prepared the pictures, I did have them labeled, but for some reason, the PDF did not agree with that formatting when it went to print. The saddle fuser is actually the item that you will see that has 2 pictures on a page, and it's kind of right in the middle. It's got a Genesis F3 label on the closed box, and then you can see the open box. And if you actually want to know what a saddle fuser does, I'll be referring that question to our general manager.
Yeah, anything with a fuser is connecting things together, like with pipe segments, right? So a saddle fuser is a connector that heats up and connects 2 pipes, and connects a saddle. You know, a saddle connection to a pipe.
All right, I learned something.
All right,
Yeah,
are there other questions?
So we're hoping to get 35,000. I'd be interested in hearing after all of this. Should we approve this? If what we got?
Yes, I'd be happy to report back to the board on the final sale price on these items.
Yeah, and it'll turn up in our financials, right, as other income or something.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, seeing no more questions or comments, I guess we need a motion. I'll entertain a motion.
Okay, I'd move to approve disposal of surplus district-owned property as outlined, item 15.
Thank you. Second, Michael, you're the only one who's
Oh,
on.
sure. Sure. I've always wanted a large asphalt saw. I didn't know it until I saw this list, but I'm looking at it and I go, I'm
You're not
jonesing.
allowed, you're not allowed to, or you can buy it at auction.
Oh, yeah.
No, you can't? Okay.
No, you're right, you cannot.
Oh,
Auction, or not at auction.
The neighbors don't.
I'll have to wait for my large asphalt saw.
Yeah, I don't think the neighbors would care for that in Laurel Grove area.
All right, Julia, a roll call vote, please, before we get punchy.
Okay, thank you. Borstein,
Yes.
Gaffney. Director Gaffney, you're muted.
Yes.
Thank you. Kelly.
Yes.
Biggs.
Yes.
Philip.
Yes.
Unanimous vote. Thank you.
Okay, item 16, informational items. Anything we want to draw attention to, or?
Yeah, I'm open to any question. I would say our operations folks really support our capital program when needed. And a good example is that we're finalizing the design for upgrades at 3 pump stations. All 3 are backup power improvements. And so our pump crew has really been working with, having input review of the designs at the Larkspur pump station and the 2 pump stations along South Elysia. That's always good that we have that informed design through maintenance, from the maintenance standpoint. And in this last month, we had a focus on manholes from the repair crew, and the repair crew now is shifting into the home stretch on cease and desist order repairs, because there's this list of 605 pipes, and we're going to give the water board an update on all 605, and the remaining work is about 46, and I think 2 of them got done today. So we're down to 44, and that was over behind Bon Air Center. We were talking about them. There's this fire pit area, a fancy patio that's behind the buildings over at the drugstore, CVS. And that was tricky work. A lot of these last repairs that Manny's crew is going to do are they're not the low hanging fruit of the 605, and this was one of them where they had to get up at 5 in the morning to meet a window where the shopping center would let us work. So I'm excited about that because, we got now the repair crew really energized, and that's what's coming up. So it's not retrospective. I will note we did have 3 spills, and they were they predated. They were leading up to that last outreach with the contractors. They were small. They were all debris related. One of them might have been more of a wipes and people flushing things down the toilet up in Fairfax. But a couple of them were clearly from debris from upstream where the rocks are a big root wad. And so that kind of tipped the scales that, they're just frustrating small spills that don't really have a big impact, but we have to report them. And so we're going to see how our contractor outreach efforts go to see if we quit seeing these 3 spill a month scenarios.
I think it's really interesting when you find wipes that who's doing them and what communities. I mean, they need education. That's a good thing to talk about whenever you find it. Thanks.
Yeah, we do have that actually, and that was a good point. And we did make up some. We have these door hangers that we carry around in all of our trucks. And if there is a fog related spill, we hang up the fog on surrounding properties. And if there's a wipes related spill, we hang up the wipes. And so that's my understanding is what our crews do. They do take the opportunity to take our public outreach materials and hang them on doors if there's an incident.
Hey, Steve, I wanted to point out the crew was in my neighborhood, Florbell, checking out the manholes with both of the trucks, the newer one and the older one, doing a great job. I went up and chatted with them. They're great guys. I don't know if this gets too personal or if this is something that we'd be interested in, but maybe in the long run, we could save money on fogs if we gave some sort of a discount for the installation of these inexpensive bidets.
Bidet?
Yeah.
Well, Doug, what kind of bidet? There's different kinds. I mean, we'd have to get very literal here.
I hope he's not.
Table the bidet discussion.
I think we've reached the end of the
Hey,
bidet.
it's the business we're in. I mean, I get it. It's the business
Did
we're
a
in.
job.
Sometimes you have to talk about uncomfortable things. You know?
Well, I think on the page it says acronyms, abbreviations, terms, and definitions. We need to have TMI in there.
So Doug, is that an appurtenance to an existing toilet then? Because when I think of a bidet, I think of another fixture.
Yeah, it's just an attachment. Takes 5 minutes.
Interesting.
Combination. Hmm.
But it takes more water.
Yeah.
Dude.
Uses less paper.
Dilution's not always the solution. Yeah.
All right, on that note, I will adjourn this meeting unless anybody wants to talk with Doug about his bidet. Okay. Do we have a meeting before our next regular meeting?
We're working on that right now.
Okay.
There may be an informational meeting, but we're still working through the details.
Okay,
Can we
so watch your.
Can we talk about that now, actually, since we have everybody online, what a good date might be for everybody? We're looking at Wednesday, the April 7th, but then that may not be so great because it's spring break, so maybe April 14th.
Yeah, I told Doug Steve rather, it is my kids' spring break, but we're not going anywhere. So,
Well, it looks like there might be some other conflicts that from our side on the consultants. So we were asking then just earlier today if maybe the 14th, which is pretty far out, but still before the
14th.
What's that?
I can't make the 14th.
You can't make the 14th. Okay. All right.
The 24th.
The 24th got by our consultants. How about?
We're talking April though.